Welcome. I'm Heather Sugg. We're here at Money 2020 USA for FinTech Futures. I am pleased to say that today we are here with friends from SAS, and I would like to talk a lot about generative AI and take a hard look into the future, looking down the road at 2035, things to come, and what are the trends we're going to be seeing. So let's start off. Diana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Definitely. I'm Diana Rothfuss. I'm the global lead for fraud, risk, and compliance at SAS. Basically, my background is to take a look at our solutions and figure out how they fit in our different geos across the world and how we can position them better for our clients and future clients.
Thank you. And Theo?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So I'm Theo, founder of Unconventional Ventures. I also hold a podcast called One Vision and tell stories of entrepreneurs from all around the world.
Thank you very much. All right, so we can't have a conversation in this room without bringing up generative AI. It's become the impossible elephant in the room. Let's start off with talking about where we're seeing use cases right now. What have you seen, even on a global scale, about where it's actually applicable and what we're able to do?
So I think it's really interesting. I've had a lot of conversations about how it's being used by the bad actors. Because again, it's not that I don't think our financial institutions want to not embrace it, but I think it's hard to embrace it if you don't understand how it's being used by those bad actors. So, I mean, it's everything. I mean, you have things from, I've been saying to people, ChatGPT has made a fraudster out of even the most common individual. Really just being able to access something which can be used for good and for bad, but being able to do things like deep fakes. The amount of voice analysis and the way that people are mimicking that now when they're doing call centers or anything, right, when you need a voice authentication, but really just even down to how they can get in through our financial institutions and compromise them in the fastest of ways possible. And the problem with that is a lot of the financial institutions haven't, really taken a look at their models and rules to see how they can combat all these bad actors with this new technology that's coming out right now.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think that's the one aspect of ChatGPT that I'm so scared of because, as Diana, you said, you can clone someone's voice in 3 seconds or less. And we already start seeing use cases of where people get scammed because they thought their loved ones were calling them. So we really need to come up with a way to figure that out really fast. But on a positive side, let's do the positive here, we are seeing financial institutions starting to use that to help their CSR agents in the call center, being able to get to information faster and to be able to help the callers in a more efficient manner. And recently we start hearing wealth advisors using that as an internal tool for wealth managers to look through information that otherwise would have taken much longer. So those are good developments that we start seeing banks and financial institutions experimenting with it. But one word I always use is just be careful, right? Innovate, but innovate responsibly and carefully.
Part of that responsibleness has to fall into how we're interacting with regulators on the scale too. So what have you seen as financial institutions almost are at the point where they have to adopt faster technology to combat what's happening on the fraudsters? How are they working with regulators? How are they staying in compliance, and what's happening?
I think what I'm seeing a lot of, and what I do really like to see from financial institutions, is this collaboration and bringing together of so-called committees, right, to work more with the regulators. So I think in the past, financial institutions, and you hear that, regulators, compliance, you just kind of take a step back and you freeze a little bit. But I think now this open partnership that has happened, and it's across the globe. It's really, just not in one specific country. I think we're seeing it more in the EMEA markets than anything else. But this partnership where they can learn together, but also work with the regulators as we're trying to implement, AI, as we're trying to work through things so that we can work in lockstep together versus, let's just say we're 3 years down the road, somebody implements a system, they try to go for AI and the regulator's like, hey, you shouldn't have done that. That's wrong because you've crossed the line now on like all these different levels.
One thing I do like is, seeing CFPP, for example, coming out and say, hey, wait a minute, you're using AI to do lending. You need to make sure that you can explain your model. You can explain whether or not you're accepting or rejecting someone and why. And it goes back to when we think about using AI in financial services, for example, in lending, a lot of the data that we used to train the model came from historical data back in the day when we were still doing redlining. So how is that being manifested in the training data that FIs are using to determine what you can and cannot do, and going back and say, you know what, this is the transparent model we're doing. This is how we explain how we get from point A to point D. I think that is incredibly important. And I hope we can do more of that.
It's a big picture scope that you're bringing up, Theo, because you need, I think, to have humans involved in the AI process all the way through. So how does a banker know when to start being a personal touch and when to have things that can be more automated?
I think what we're seeing is a lot of the collaboration again, and what I personally love to see is the amount of education that's coming from some of our younger individuals, like coming through schools and through college, educating them on coding, educating them on AI. There's more, data analytics learning, there's more practices out there. So I think the more that we're infusing that into individuals in the market, they're kind of going through the system and really learning and embracing it, because there is a huge need for, and I will say a huge need for females also in the market when it comes to data analytics and coding and whatnot. So it's great to see the programs out there that are really bringing that forward so that we can have that technology, because again, AI is great, but it does not work without humans.
I cannot agree more. So it goes back to, I believe it was something that Reggie had mentioned, is responsible AI. How do we think about responsible AI? One big part of it has to be inclusion. So for example, we looked at the LinkedIn job postings. Now, don't quote me, but I believe it's somewhere around 25% to 28% of AI and data analytics positions are by females, right? And so when you think about how our world is, more than half of our population are women. And an even smaller amount of that 25% are by women from underrepresented population. So it goes back to, if we want something to work, especially when it's technology, especially it's technology for the future, it has to represent the demographics that are in this world, because through our lived experience, through everything that we know, that's how we can make the world a more inclusive place. So it has to start with that. Put the human back in the center. As what Reggie said, look at transparency, look at human centricity, and it is our collective responsibility.
So this is something that we have to establish now while alternative AI and these data points are still in their infancy, because as we move forward, the ship can sail away and we've already lost our chance to make this right. So what are some alternative data points and some points that we should be making sure that we're looking at as we're building AI models?
So I think one big part is going back to looking at, do we understand where the data is coming from? Do we understand how the model is being constructed? Do we know the whole, lack of a better word, sausage making, right? That's coming out from us. So what I love is some of the companies are taking a very active role at debiasing the data, which is a thing now. So a lot of times we talk about automation and taking jobs away. What automation has done is actually creating jobs for humans to say, hey, let's check to make sure that what are we seeing on the output side, and does it sync up to what it's supposed to be? And if not, why? And let's go back and clean it. Someone used a really, really good analogy. It's oil spill. When you have bad data leaking out in the wild, guess what? You can't really clean it as oil spill. So let's make sure that we are very responsible upfront and we know what we're doing. And I think that's, to your point, the regulation part is important, responsibility part is important. And I know, Heather, you and I talked about this before. Innovation is wonderful, but please do not release the tool out in the public with an asterisk. Hey, it's not ready. No, it's too late. So let's not do that.
No, I love what you said about, being responsible and understanding where the data is coming from. I know one of the things that we're trying to do is educate and talk more, with our customers, obviously with people that would also want to come to SAS, about this concept of enterprise decisioning and what that looks like to really understand all of the data within your organization. Because really, we talk about operating in silos. I think that's been a conversation for I don't even know how many years. But what we're trying to do is kind of reframe that a little bit, right? So most organizations are opposed to bringing their departments together. I mean, I think I heard somebody tell me once that if I tried to bring their AML department, their fraud department, it'd be like cats and dogs, and it would just not work out. But at the same time, now with all this orchestration and all these abilities to be within one platform in an organization, you can really understand where all those data points are coming from. But it also helps with things like lending, making sure you're having the right offer out there to the right individual, but making also that you're being responsible with it as well. So you can check all those boxes. You can understand who's a customer and who isn't a customer. So it also stops those bad actors from coming through the door. And it really, I think, helps with the checks and balances. Again, without having to merge departments, you're breaking down silos and understanding the data a little bit better.
Makes perfect sense. All right, last thing to wrap up generative AI. If you had a wish about where you'd like to see it come in the next year, how we can mature as a market, where would it be?
I think for me, I really want to see not just financial institutions, I would love to see organizations in general really take a look at generative AI and how they can use that within their organization. So not have it be such this word of like, it's happening to us. It's like, okay, let's embrace it. And how can we help others? How can we help our systems run better? How can we help make more responsible decisions? How can we use this for good? And again, I think that can be any organization within any industry.
I like that. And I would resonate with that. So one thing that has stuck with me this year has been my favorite quote, and I'm going to have to quote Reggie again. What is our duty of care? We all have a responsibility within financial services industry. Doesn't matter if you're a UX developer, doesn't matter if you're a data scientist, or you're a branch manager. We are all part of the money movement. So what is our duty to make sure that the audience that we serve are being served the way that they should be? And so when we look at technologies such as generative AI, we are hitting a lot of low-hanging fruits, right? Using it for marketing, using it for messaging, using it for internal stuff. The tool can be so much more powerful. We know how to leverage technology in a responsible manner. So look at what are on people's minds. What are we thinking about at the dinner table? We worried about the economy. We worried about we might not be able to make ends meet. We're worried about we might not be able to have enough money for retirement or emergency purpose. So how can we use the power of data analytics and AI to help us better plan our future? That's what I would like to say.
I love it. So that makes me think, Theo, you were here signing your first book, Beyond Good, and part of what we all love about FinTech is the people. We work with some great people. How are we doing as an industry about really being responsible and making sure that we're trying to achieve something better with what we're doing?
Wow, that is a broad question. So Beyond Good was written in the start of COVID. It was not planned that way. It turned out to be that way. And it became an exercise of reflection, reflecting on what are the mega trends of the world: inequality, wealth, inequality in particular, poverty, gender inequity, longevity as an opportunity and a challenge, and climate crisis. And what we hope to achieve with the book, and I hope it did resonate with at least some of the audience, is that there are a lot of challenges in the world, but there are also a lot of helpers. It's like Mr. Rogers, right? In time of crisis, look for the helpers. And there were a lot of helpers. And that was what the book was about, is understanding what are the challenges in front of us, but what are some financial institutions doing? So we brought in examples from community banks. We brought in examples from B Corp that are doing amazing things to try to tackle the climate crisis, to try to create more inclusive opportunities for immigrants, for women. So those are positive stories that I wanted to hope we can continue to bring forth.
Thank you. And now, looking about the future and how we continue to create that positive momentum, SAS has put together a survey with The Economist that looked out into big, exciting future predictions, which this show has been good at addressing. So I know, Diana, you were sharing some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so the study we did with The Economist was banking in 2035, and it's really insightful because, and it's actually very interesting because we did this last year, and even the climate of how it's been received in a year has completely changed. So the idea was that let's take a look at what banking would be like in 2035, but let's also look at some of the problems, some of the things that are going on right now. And it's interesting with this approach to, human equality and climate change and whatnot. When I will say it's interesting because when the survey first came out, we got a lot of great, publicity and press, and people really wanted to talk about it, but it almost was still in that phase of coming right out of COVID, right? People weren't really sure. I don't think anybody was really thinking too progressively because they were a little bit worried about what's going on. And it has been one of the most popular conversations. I think it's very refreshing to attend some of these conferences. I was at one a couple weeks ago where ESG became the biggest topic in the room, like bigger than AI. Well, generative AI, of course, everybody wants to talk about that. But you would not have seen that conversation, a year ago. So I think the fact that organizations, and again, it was kind of what I said for the future, I do see that organizations want to become more responsible. I think it's also a good sign of younger leadership coming up, because I feel like we do have that mindset of wanting to be more responsible, to do good, be good. And how can we institute that into organizations and really, especially in financial institutions, be responsible for the outcomes?
And that I would summarize it as shared prosperity, right?
Yeah.
We're all in it together.
Absolutely. And it's the ecosystem in us all helping one another and learning from one another that helps make us better. Well, any last thoughts, ladies?
No, I mean, I personally am really excited. I've been in the financial services industry in some sort, for the last 12 years. And I really think it's great to see how much it is improving. I mean, I've worked in the back ends of banks, when you talk about fair lending and AML and compliance and all those things became a thing, when Know Your Customer became a thing, it is really great to see technology be put to good use, and how we can enable, especially from our end, how we can enable and educate financial institutions to really embrace AI, embrace the technology instead of being afraid of it. And again, just do good with it.
Yes, data for good,
Data
right?
for good.
That's what we like. And at the end of the day, I still think we all have a responsibility, but we also have the power to ensure whether or not AI is going to be our co-pilot or is going to be our overlord. So the power is within us, and I hope we will choose the right path.
No oil spills in our data. I like that.
I love that.
I know. All right, well, thank you both for joining us. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you.